right, when it comes to data sufficiency, because it is a unique game, we have some unique strategy involved that can help us on test day, just generally speaking. So there are two types of data sufficiency questions. First type is a yes/no, and we're going to cover the other type, which is a value question, in another video. So a yes/no data sufficiency question is a question that has a yes/no answer. They usually have words like is. Is x greater than 3? Yes or no. Versus a value question would be like, what is x equal to? And then we'd have to actually provide a value for x. But here we don't have to provide a value for x. We just have to know if x is greater than 3 or if it's not greater than 3. Now, an important thing to say about yes/no data sufficiency questions is a no answer is still sufficient. So a no answer would be a situation like you find out x is less than 2. Well, if x is less than 2, it's definitely not greater than 3. So your answer to the question would be no, x is not greater than 3. And that would be a sufficient answer to the question. So you would choose answer choice A if that was your statement 1. But in this situation, we have x is less than 4 as our first statement. So another tip on data sufficiency is always look at the two statements and start with the easier of the two. I think statement 1 is easier, so I'm going to start with statement 1. It's shorter, it's more concise, there's less going on. This has a square, 2 inequalities, it looks super confusing. So we're going to start with statement 1. Is x greater than 3? Yes or no? Statement 1 says x is less than 4. Now, this is where strategy comes in. I'm playing devil's advocate, okay? And by playing devil's advocate on data sufficiency, we can solve problems intuitively without worrying about a ton of extra math. So I know that this might be obvious for some people right away, and the way that you're thinking about it is probably by playing devil's advocate anyways. So the question is x greater than 3? Just pick a random number that follows this rule. So this is a rule that we have to follow. X is less than 4. Okay, I'm going to pick x is equal to 3. Is x greater than 3? This would answer our question, no. X is equal to 3, it's not greater than 3. Now that I've got a no answer, this is where I start playing devil's advocate. Can I get a yes answer? Because if I can get both a no and a yes answer to our question, then I don't have enough information to answer the question. So can x be something greater than 3 and still less than 4? Well, I'm going to test numbers between 3 and 4. And yes, x could be 3.5. So this proves that statement 1 was insufficient. It's insufficient because I don't know if the answer to my question is yes or no based on that hint alone. All right, so we've said statement 1 is insufficient. Statement 2, x squared is greater than 9 and less than 25. Now, if you watched our last video that talked about data sufficiency intro, we talked about the idea that when we have even exponents, we lose the sign. So there's two answers here. It's either the positive or negative version of the square root of x squared. So looking at these options, I know that x is greater than 3 or less than 5 if x is positive. But if x is negative, it's actually going to be x is greater than -5 and less than -3. And imagine if x was -4. If that's confusing, if you plug in 4 or -4 here, you get an answer that follows this rule. And because we have two numbers that follow this rule that are so different, we could use these to test and play devil's advocate on our original question, is x greater than 3? This would give us a yes answer. This would give us a no answer. So that is insufficient because we don't know if the answer to what x is greater than 3 or not. So the author knows what x is, but we have not figured that out yet. Taking the two statements together, can we get a sufficient answer? Well, I already know that the number -4 follows both rules. So -4 is an option that follows both rules, and I can only choose numbers to test that follow both of these rules at this point. So I've crossed out A and B. It's not that one of these statements on their own will be sufficient. I've also crossed out D because if neither of them is sufficient, then each of them alone is not sufficient. And answer choice C says either both of them together are sufficient, or answer choice E, even when we take them together, they're not sufficient. Now, because -4 gives us a no answer to the question, is x greater than 3, I need to now find a yes answer. If I can't find a yes answer, then I accept that this is sufficiently no, meaning that the answer will always be no. But I'm playing devil's advocate and I'm trying to prove that this question could be insufficient. And by taking that approach, I'm going to get more answers right. And so can I find an answer that follows both of these rules? So it's either an answer that is less, it has to be less than 4, and it has to be within the ranges we defined earlier, where x is greater than 3 and less than 5, or less than -3 and greater than -5. And I need to find values that work in both scenarios. So if x is less than 4 and x is in one of these ranges, can I get a yes answer to x is greater than 3? I can, and it's where x is less than 4 but greater than 3. So this is really constraining the top of this rule, because I no longer care about the less than 5. If it's less than 4, it's definitely less than 5. So the number 3.5 is a number that falls in that range. It's less than 4, but it's in this range. So this would give me a yes answer, x is greater than 3, and that is why this is also insufficient when taken together, which means answer choice C is out and our answer is answer choice E. So playing devil's advocate and trying to prove the statements are insufficient is the robust way of attacking yes-no questions. And we're also going to play that game a little bit in data sufficiency questions that are value-based questions as well. But it's a robust framework. It's a strong way of quickly figuring out whether or not something is sufficient or insufficient without actually doing algebra.